Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our channel. My name is Teddy Knight, and today we're going to react to The Origin of Consciousness, How Unaware Things Become Aware, by Kurzgats. In a nutshell. We've reacted to them before on this channel. They produce great content, everybody knows them, they produce highly trending videos, they're insanely popular, everyone knows them. Go like, go subscribe, they deserve all the love, happiness, and everything else like that in the world. They put so much more effort into their videos than I ever possibly could. Now, I'm going to start this video as I seem to do with all the videos that are about science. I am not a science major. I'm not a science major. My majors are philosophy and sociology, followed up by psychology and history. I switched from a psychology major into a sociology major, and I'm doing a philosophy major as well along with that, with history as like a side thing. It might become my minor, I'm not sure, and psychology probably going to become my minor because I was majoring in it and then switched. So those are my areas of study. That is what I know. If that's at all relevant to you. So I'm not a science person. I don't know biology, I don't know evolutionary biology, I don't know chemistry, God help me, I don't know chemistry. So on those topics, I'm going to have very little to say, but I'm going to attempt to tie as much of this video into the areas of study that I know. Now, out of those 4 areas of study, the area that I'm weakest is philosophy. So I'll probably be tying things more into the historical, sociological, and psychological view, but I might have some philosophical views on this as well, or like little tidbits I can throw in. But I don't know where this is going to go. So we're just gonna have to sit on our hands and see where this ends up, right? So let's go.
Consciousness is perhaps the biggest riddle in nature. Stripped to its core meaning, consciousness is what allows us to be aware both of our surroundings and of our own inner state. But thinking about consciousness has this habit of taking us round in circles. We all intuitively know what consciousness is. It's this. It's what you're experiencing here, right now. But once we try to pinpoint just what exactly it is, it leaves us grasping at thin air.
Yeah, it becomes like poking at a mirror. I can't remember who said it, but I'm sure he'll get to the statement. You can only ever be sure of your own consciousness. You can never be sure of anyone else's. That's why ideas of like that we're all in a simulation, things like that, seem to be quite popular, because you have no proof that anyone else is conscious. You only have proof that you yourself is conscious. I can't remember what school of philosophical thought that comes from off the top of my head, but I know that there's schools of philosophical thought that go into that. But yeah, that's a question that's been asked for years. I know that's the reason why small children, for instance, ranging from babies to around, I think children start developing a sense of others, like truly developing a sense of others, at around the ages of 6 or 7, maybe 8. So that's why children can seem so cruel, because they believe everyone else sees the world, because their brain hasn't developed enough. They believe everyone else in the world sees the world in the same way that they do. They can't. Undeveloped brains can't comprehend the fact that people don't see the world exactly as they do. So you see that in the way different children behave, how they can sometimes be cruel, or they make simple mistakes because they're basing their assumptions on the idea that you know exactly what they're talking about, because of course you know exactly what they're talking about, because they can't grasp the idea that there is something different. But what he's talking about here is it is unprovable. So really, a young child's position could be argued more, I wouldn't say developed, but more honest when it comes to the idea that you can't be sure that somebody else is like you. You can't be sure that they know exactly that they have the same inner dialogue and things like that you do. It's fundamentally impossible. So let's see where he goes from there.
And not just us. Philosophers and scientists struggle to define consciousness. Different schools and ideas compete with one another, but no one has come close to figuring it out.
No, no one has, not even slightly. The most we have come up with is that it's just like a consensus that we have to agree to.
It's unsettling to realize that we don't understand what makes us aware of ourselves and the world. In this fuzzy area, consciousness and intelligence are also related, although they are not the same. We'll talk in greater depth about theories of consciousness and intelligence in other videos.
This is also why, for the longest time, the theory of the soul was such a big idea. Because a lot of people believed that, and a lot of people still do believe, that the soul is your consciousness, that the soul is this undefinable thing that is you, and that everyone has one. So that's why that's such a big thing, because there is no you in your body, right? Like, it's not your heart, it's only kind of your brain, right? And there's all these different things. So that's why the idea of the soul is so popular, because it's like, obviously that is the intangible you-ness that exists.
Like much of what makes us human, our consciousness is likely to have evolved from less complex forms as a product of evolution by natural selection. It has probably emerged from an immense several hundred million year sequence of countless microsteps that together make up a sort of gradient of consciousness. What was the first step on this path from the non-conscious to the basic consciousness that ultimately led to the convoluted consciousness we humans enjoy today?
I just have to say, I love their animation style. They put so much work into it.
Take a stone. The consensus is that a stone is not conscious, though not everyone agrees even on this. Some panpsychists claim that a lump of rock may have an inner life. However, there are no real grounds for any such assumption, since stones never show behavior. Their inner life can neither be proven nor disproven. A more common starting point is
That's neither proven or disproven is also an argument for God and gods, right? You can't argue whether or not it exists or not, because there is no proof one way or another. It's interesting how that fact ties into consciousness as well. I don't know offhand. It sounds familiar, but I believe there was some philosophical position that believed consciousness and God and godlyhood is connected. I can't remember where I read that, and I'm sure I butchered it, but I remember there was a philosophical thought. Well, calling it philosophical might be too far, but this idea out there that is consciousness, like what we are, is like a piece of a god or something like that. I can't remember the specifics, but I remember that was a thing.
is with living things. A living thing, or a self, is a part of the universe that sustains itself and makes more of its kind. To do so, it needs energy. And this is where an awareness of the world comes in handy. The original function of consciousness was probably to direct a mobile self that was short of energy to a fresh supply of food. On the smaller scales of life, you don't need to be aware to find food. Trichoplax adherens, one of the simplest of all animals, moves around haphazardly. It slows down in the presence of food and speeds up in its absence. This is highly effective and makes the tiny creature spend more time where there is food than where there is not. But it never moves in a particular direction towards a particular target, and there's no need for it to be conscious of its environment. The first major step towards consciousness was probably taken when mobile selves started to move themselves directionally, moving towards what was good for them, say food, and away from what was less good, say someone else who thought that they were food. Take Dugicia tigrina, a tiny worm known for its funny face. Sometimes the worm is hungry, and sometimes not. This means that when it moves, the worm self is not simply producing an automatic response to an external stimulus, but that its actions depend upon its inner physiological state, whether it's hungry or sated. When it's just eaten, the worm is less energetic, but when starved for a while, it will move itself in the direction of tasty things. It uses chemoreceptors on its head to smell its environment and guide it in the direction where the scent of food is strongest. After finding and eating a meal, our worm buddy heads back to a dark, sheltered spot to digest it in safety, until it's hungry again.
Biology, chemistry, all this other different type of stuff, not my area. So I don't have much to say here.
But animals that blindly follow their sense of smell don't have a concrete objective in view. They still lack any sense of where they are heading. So the next step on the ladder of consciousness is to add some perception at a distance, like vision. Vision adds context and depth to our world. With vision comes a sense of the space we and our food exist in. It adds a whole new dimension to awareness and is a huge step towards more familiar consciousness. An optical apparatus like an eye enables us to visualize our goal and lock onto it. But even at this stage, a self is only able to pursue its food as long as it sees it. So the next logical step needs to happen on the inside. To visualize food in its absence, for example, a self needs to create some sort of inner representation of the world. Now an animal can continue looking for food even when it escapes its sensory range. Because of this inner representation of what is relevant in the world, it can remain focused on its food and its desire to get it. Our self now exists in a world it can get familiar with. The ability to remember things.
That looks too much like a hornet, and that freaks me out. I'm definitely allergic to bees and hornets. That freaks me out.
Has emerged. Thanks to memory, animals can be distracted from a pursuit for a few seconds, but quickly continue their path afterwards. A related phenomenon is called object permanence. This describes our awareness that things continue to exist even when we can't see them. This cognitive skill is enjoyed by some mammals and birds, and perhaps other animals too. Human babies tend to develop this ability around the time they turn 8 months, while baby chickens show this ability within a day or two of being born. The capacity to remember a thing in its absence suggests
There are a lot of tests on... I remember to a class on this, but specifics have clearly eluded me. There are a lot of tests on childhood development where, like, different block tests and things like that, seeing the age range of when children start developing, like, depth perception, understanding, like, where the ball in the cup is a good example, where the ball in the cup went, things like that. There are a lot of different tests out there. There was one example that I was going to say, and then my mind has completely erased it. It might come back later, but yeah, there was an example I was going to say, but I seem to have completely lost that. Wow. I took that class like a year and a half ago, and it seems like nearly all the information has deleted itself. I tend to think of my brain as like a catalog, like a filing cabinet. So like the information is, or I know that I have the information. It's like filed away. I know I have it filed away. There's just a processing error when I go to go grab it. My brain's just like, oh, I just forgot where I put the file. I know I filed it. I just forgot where I put the file. So maybe the file will come back to me.
at least a basic sense of time. A sense of time is a big step on the ladder of consciousness. It may also enable a self to look forward from the present moment and anticipate.
I have chickens. I have 8 chickens out there. Bok bok. Go to my Discord. I think I have a picture of them somewhere.
Future. Adult chickens, for example, are able to resist a meal put in front of them if they expect to receive a bigger meal as a prize for holding back for a while.
No, my chickens. My chickens are dumb. My chickens are dumb as a rock. They surround me like ants. Like, anytime I go out there and go like, chickens, chickens, they surround me in like a complete circle. And they just like balk at me. And then like as I'm like walking to go feed them with the feed thing, they just like continuously surround me as I go. They have no patience. And the moment I throw down food, it's just like... I'm sure some chickens, but my chickens are dumb.
This sort of delayed gratification means there is an ability to visualize a reward that only exists in the future, which can be quite a challenge even for adult humans.
Yeah, very true.
Western scrub jays are experts in delayed gratification. They show an even more elaborate sense of the future when they hide food in a cache to retrieve it at a later date. The scrub jays will even re-hide their food if they become aware that a potential thief has been watching them. This means that they know that there are other hungry selves out there who are aware and see the world from their own different perspective. Crafty scrub jays can sort of read the mind of their fellow birds. This ability to mind read is crucial for complex levels of consciousness. By putting yourself in the position of others, you can outsmart a rich competitor or empathize with a hungry friend. Language takes the ability to read minds and represent what is absent to a whole new level. Words enable us to construct hypotheses about the world, make detailed plans, and to communicate them with others. Words enable us to think about ourselves and our place in the universe.
True. Words and language and things like that were probably the biggest development humanity has ever done. Just creating language and then writing as well became the biggest stepping stones humanity has ever done. Without those, we wouldn't exist.
And even about our own consciousness, which is something we'll be doing more in future videos. So what is the origin of our
We would still be apes in the jungle.
consciousness? It probably began as the directed motion of a hungry self towards a source of food, with the survival benefits this gave it over competitors that moved at random or not at all. It probably all started with the urge for more food. So even with the sophisticated consciousness that allows us to dream about space, build skyscrapers, or obsess about novels, it's not surprising that we can't stop thinking about where we'll get our next meal. Collectively, we've put so much thought and ingenuity into getting food that we can now just get our food to come to us with little conscious effort. This video is part 1 of a 3-part video series relating to big questions of life and the universe, made possible by a grant from the Templeton World Charity Foundation. You can find our sources and further reading in the video description, or get the Consciousness book by Rupert Glasgow for free, link down below. If you want to help us make more videos, you can do so on patreon.com, or get one of our posters from our shop.
Great video, as always, by Curse of Gods. Go like, go subscribe. They deserve all the love, happiness, and everything else like that. Go join the Patreon. They deserve it. I'm honestly positively surprised that they got a grant from a charity to do video. Like, that's amazing to me. That they're so big that they can get grants from charities and other things like that to produce videos on consciousness. That's amazing. I'm going to have to watch the next parts of this particular series. I wonder if the next one's here. I'll have to go look. I'll have to make a note of it. No, that was amazing. If you like my particular ramblings on the topic, I did my best to tie it to my particular areas of study. I hope I succeeded in some way. But yeah, if you like mine, give me a like, give me a subscribe. If you want to leave comments down below, go for it, I guess. If you really hate me, despise everything I do, leave a negative comment or a negative like or whatever. I thrive on your hatred. I don't really care. If you have any ideas what I should do next, leave them down below. I'll take it into consideration. Whether or not I act on it is really depending on my depression and laziness, which is competing levels of nonsense. Yeah, so we'll see. Apart from that, love, butts, and happiness, and everything else like that. I'll see you boys in the next one. Boys and ghouls in the next one. Bye-bye, everyone. Oh, this one was kind of